this for the last few years has been right that the body makes recommendations, and a lot of times those recommendations are considered without the body being present to directly discuss, well, here's why we're making this recommendation. Here's the documents that we reviewed. Here are the people that we heard from, that sort of justified or provided rationale or context or understanding on which this recommendation has been made before there's a decision, right? And so we want to make sure that you guys are having the opportunity to directly speak to, your concerns, your desires, and where they come from. And so I think, to Patrice's point, the equity committee, potentially being in that space to bring those things directly is really important. We didn't get into the statement directly in the meeting because I think both times we tried to have this particular discussion, there were a lot of things on the agenda, which is not a bad thing at all. But we ended up mainly speaking to the report itself, and I also just talked about what I perceive as some potential burnout for you all, for lack of a better term, and what can feel like frustration with how much work are we actually doing? What are we actually accomplishing? I think even within this group, there's a sense that we could or should be doing more or should be checking off more of our requirements, right, that are part of our charge, and speaking to some of the things that have gotten in the way of that. One of them being, that these are really large undertakings, for one, that require a lot of different parts and a lot of times require cooperation from organizations or entities that may not be directly represented within the R job, as well as, just the, sort of already stated concept of you guys needing the board to approve the things that you do, and how that can lend itself sometimes to even community members showing up to certain meetings and saying, hey, I thought you guys were doing XYZ, right? You're supposed to be doing that. And it's not happening, but it's not because this body isn't doing its work. It's because there's another level at which, the recommendations that this body makes need to be approved. And so, just wanting to create more of a space for this body to share in some of that decision-making authority in meaningful ways, so that the community members, many of whom are on this call, who show up faithfully and speak to, any number of issues, feel heard, and feel that, what they're asking for is being reflected. This body being, selected, and, all of the work that went into this body existing in the first place, as well as being, staffed with so many of you, like, that should count for something in terms of what results from the work that you're doing. And so wanting to make sure that we're continuing to think about and seize every opportunity to make that connection and make sure that that's happening. So that was, I think, in short, essentially what my feedback was. And like Patrice said, usually we're having this conversation much earlier in the year and talking about the previous year, but because of the pause that was beyond the control of anybody in this body, wanted to also speak about what had been going on earlier this year as well, and up to the point of the meeting itself. So I'll leave it there unless there are any questions.
Yeah, because I've been a regular attendee to the equity committee, and this letter was important to me. So I don't feel like we made any progress, but it shifts our understanding of how, if this happened again, how would we position to do anything this from now. So these are words on a piece of paper, and went to the equity committee, which is chaired by Supervisors Glover and Joya, and then received it, I guess. But what next? What's the action that should be taken? So when I typically write out any complaint or challenge or anything like that, that I'm expecting, based on having received this letter, we can put this in place. So even who attends the faculty committee, even if it's for educational purposes, that they are there to learn about the frustration that some of us have felt, especially those who live in this event. And we want this not to happen. So just having a letter from this body is not enough to just that. So low in this belief system, but otherwise, you know, we show up to implement progress towards having racial justice.
Yeah, recommending that you should do so. So I agree with you. Yeah, we expect this of our response.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all agree, that's why we decided that this letter was important, so, right? I mean, it would, I don't know what the supervisors, if they express like specific actions they would take, but I think one of the things as part of this body is how do we start making those recommendations? How do we also keeping that letter that we submitted in mind, what are the recommendations that we're also making throughout the year? And then also ensuring that those recommendations are implemented. So I think it's an ongoing thing. Definitely not one off thing. I think this is just the first step.
Well, as a newer member to this group, and now we have the Racial Justice Act and other things that we can, you know, play off. Have we made improvements with the profile of these who, what we should be working for improving the spirit? Does this group start meeting what new policies or practices are in place so that we can say, oh, show through this meeting, 3-hour meeting, you know, but it's making a difference. Because now we've been able to put some things in place that are being adhered to improve the outcomes. I know that in my city, anyhow, young people are still the largest group of individuals who are taken to our juvenile justice system daily, despite us recognizing that nothing changed.
No, I think, I mean, it's obvious, and I guess I agree. This has been a slow process. I know that, I figured that, once, viable, tangible recommendations on the table, it's gonna open up dialogue and we start getting those things done. So I'm expecting a lot out of this, per se, because we've been working towards something for quite some time. And now it's in, this part right here is, pretty significant and it's in writing. So, it shouldn't be a question as to it not being responded to, the dialogue opened up as to what can and cannot be done moving forward. Some real issues, being addressed and, not only responded to, but change or, new policies implemented or something like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Sure other folks are too, but yeah, it's shouldn't be a secret or anything like that. So I'm looking forward to that part of the process. So I'm kind of like mumbling to myself, like, yeah, I'm in total agreement with what you're saying. And we're looking for some definitely things of this magnitude. There has to be change. It's not even, it's not even. Community can't function with that kind of authority in the community with, you know, that power, and then having it be a biased power and, you know, impacting, you know, a community, in that way. So it provides a very, very, very unstable, you know, community. So, we can't allow that to function. That's why this body is here to speak out and try to speak to, you know, the body that can make those changes. So I don't see, you know, any other issue.
So, listen, I agree 100%. And my 2 cents is, besides the letter, what are we actually recommend? The real question is, well, what do we want done? What do you want done when it comes to boots on the ground, real world change? So how do you accomplish that, right? In this particular instance with Antioch, you're talking about, I'm guessing, I don't know true details of it, personal cell phones and their use, and then how do you curtail that type of, you know, activity? Are we asking that the agency provide more training beyond like what is provided in the county? What is provided within the agency's training? Do they need more supervision? What type of checks and balances are we asking the agency to do? Because if you don't recommend that stuff, then who's really seeing and taking the lead once the letter gets to that particular agency?
Yeah, that's part of our job, right?
Right.
To bring forth those recommendations and those the things we want the change to happen. That's our job to bring that to the board. So, yeah, a list of things, multiple things, based on the outcomes that took place. So, that's where I'm at.
And I'll just share, we shouldn't have to go out of this county to improve outcomes. I've been working with the Quito family, and we now have on the desk of the governor, no more using the term recited delirium, which is racially biased, right? Because 57% of the time when an officer kills someone by excessive force, the terminology excited delirium is used. It's junk science, there's no scientific basis for it. But now it sits on the governor's lap. That's all I'll say. But it's been there because community members said, especially those from the mental health field, said, this is not okay. You can't kill people and get away with it. And so once he signs it, that's a big effort that came out of this county from outcomes. And as it was racially biased, Gibson, who assembly member outside of this area who championed it with the family and other like that, made a difference. They made a difference. And so we've been looking at things in this county, like the disproportionate number of Black and brown young people in jail, knowing that they make, especially African American, less than 10% of the population. How is it possible that all these kids coming from Antioch and Pittsburgh, when we know based on the age group, kids in that middle mistakes that break the law, Walnut Creek, Lafayette, however, that they never show up in our juvenile justice system. So we know there's some bias associated with that. So if we have a policy such as, in order to imprison, because that's what it is, a young person, all these things that remove the bias should be checked first. And I don't know if it was Christopher or the Burns Institute that brought in some folks 4 months ago who would do that really, innovative kind of work to put in place practices that reduce the disparity. So, and I know that we're completely thinking about this, but they have some things underway that they're doing, but we have to send a message up of no tolerance of this. You can't just have a committee. You have to have the committee producing policies and procedures, and we want to see a difference in a change, really. I mean, we all do carry a come go, but we don't want to stay this way. I mean, I'm trying to break the school to prison pipeline. So I'm at this meeting, I'm at school district meeting, I'm at any meeting where I think a young person is going to be headed to jail because they're not at risk, they're at promise, given an opportunity. They'll need the opportunity. the risk part is highlighted more than the tax part. That's just not acceptable.
Gigi, what do you think that, kind of to your point and thinking about what you were saying, because I totally agree with you. I think what I would ask is, what do you think we should do as a body as far as the different steps, right? Because we're not gonna do it today. But what do you think is the first step? What committee should it happen to start talking about some of the specific things? Because, and I will say, and I don't want this to be missed, and I know this is a long process, and I've been part of it for a really long time. But there are things that have happened, so I don't want that to go unnoticed, and a lot of people have been around this table and other areas for a really long time. Doing the work and getting some changes that are just really slow. So particularly for this, what are some of the first steps you'd like for us to take?
So I'm not aware of the things that you guys have accomplished, but that means you have a template of success of some area. Let's follow it for the other area. So if we have made some positive progress in what the mission of this is, let's duplicate that in the areas where we haven't. Right, let's look at the ingredients that produce better outcomes and let's employ them in other areas.
And do you think, like, I think you're part of the community engagement committee, right? Is that a place where?
Engagement and funding, and after we found out about this, I went to several meetings and the last one funding, because I was looking for funding, for young people who are not traumatized. It hasn't happened. It has not happened. So, and I know that Melvin was moved to a chairman position, but there was a level of frustration at that last meeting. And I'm trying to get to that part of the meeting where we would talk about where the pocket of money that we can utilize to then put in place to keep more young people who are now they don't care. We should just go do this. They're watching us, they're treating everybody. That's what we're trying to curtail. But so far, I think $300 for non-subscription. So, accounting of support. And the visa costs, I thought. I'm not even trying to calculate the time that the public can do. Thank you so much, volunteer on their time.
No, I'm confused to like what committee, because I mean, we won't be able to do anything today, but like what committee should actually start that process of thinking of like, okay, we sent in a letter now, what is our next step? What is our escalation process for that? So yeah,
I mean, I do think that the community engagement committee could be a good place for that. And I think there's also potentially like key points to connect with the diversion committee and think about what it looks like to implement maybe some of the things that coming up for you all. I think in the diversion committee, we've already been talking about the criteria around diversion criteria and things like that. So I think there's probably some touch points where the two committees can connect and figure different things out. And even that could help facilitate whatever recommendations. But I do think that the community engagement committee could be a place for that. And, you know, it may be several meetings where you're thinking about, okay, well, these are the different programs that we would like to see. And then there's a separate meeting thinking about funding and where the funding is, and thinking about who actually needs to be at the table to discuss funding. Because I don't know, I have no idea, but I do think that is a discussion that needs to happen.
Just a quick reminder for folks, because I'm getting notices that it sometimes sounds a little muffled. If you can, be sure to elevate when you speak. That would be
something loud already,
I
but.
The only thing is, this is not the fancy county administrative office that has lights everywhere. So.
I did what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it wasn't you, it was others.
It's a really good discussion. I think both the sort of bigger question philosophically of how we're gonna steer our efforts, but then also kind of pragmatically, okay, what are the next steps of which committee? I was looking now, Gigi, to the Center for Policing actually brought in our, got my notes from our June, early June meeting, and I think this June time flies. I think there's a couple of pieces with what they brought, which was sort of a public safety redesign, kind of both the container systems and the systems that are in place. What are some of the best practices nationally? What have they seen? And then what do we want to ask for? Because I think there's always the tension of, you know, this is the county board of supervisors, a lot of the law enforcement is run by cities, but I don't think that should stop this group as the county's racial justice oversight body, with so many community folks, faith leaders, county leaders, et cetera, from saying, here are the best practices in law enforcement that we think any law enforcement agency in Contra Costa County should follow. I think that would be one piece that follow up item. And then I think also just that study of or maybe bringing CPD because I felt like they gave us a great, you know, entry level overview, but I think there's a lot of, we've been working with, there's just a lot of that that they do, and in the lessons they've learned from seeing things repeat in other jurisdictions, from seeing that kind of racist policing we've seen in East County and seeing communities over years wrestle with how to improve those situations. I think perhaps bringing them back and having one goal would be a series of recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for what we believe local law enforcement practices should be, but in tandem with that, kind of adjusting the vision in the way that CP and I think other experts in the field that are engaging in anti-racist practices espouse, which is what are the things that Gigi's been a champion of, other people in the room, what are things that law enforcement should be responding to, and what are things that folks that are trained clinicians should be responding to, you know, what are ways to build more support in schools, in other spaces in our community, so that responses are really tuned. And so I don't have a great idea about which subcommittee, but I was thinking of suggesting a new subcommittee, but I knew Patrice would kill me. So you can hear me not say that.
Well, that is.
I didn't even think it. So
But I will say this piggyback on what Ellen was saying, because I think that's a good idea. I would make the recommendation that if we bring them back, we could set up, still having the public here, but if we could set it up as more of a workshop meeting instead of one of these types of meetings, I think it would be much more helpful. And I think it can also create ways where we're gonna have community participate. And then to your point, Gigi, about not knowing like what accomplishments have happened. And I think you're exactly right. I think that's one of the areas where we haven't been the best at. And it's letting folks know what those accomplishments are and working with the community to find out what else it is that we need to do. So I would recommend also that as the community engagement committee like keeps rolling on, that figure out like what exactly do we do to make sure that community knows what's happening, what's already happening, and then creating a space where they can voice some of their concerns and also some of their solutions. Because I think it's really important that we just don't tell community, hey, we think these are the solutions that you need, but we're actually listening to them. Because I'm sure there's some really good ideas out there too. And then we can figure out how to finesse things. But I think that's important.
Kind of reminds me of the community, so I see Chris laughing. It reminds me of the community forum we had a while back, right before maternity leave. That was a year and a half ago. Definitely something where community, although we didn't respond to community suggestions because it was just like be here to listen. It might be a good idea to have that conversation again, we can actually have a dialogue this time.
And I would suggest like treating it like it's a workshop meeting.
Yeah.
As well.
Other comments, folks online?
Chris, I know you want to say something.
Nothing from Chris?
Yeah, so I'm smiling because I can't make out what's being said very well. I catch bits and pieces of things that sound like things that I appreciate and support wholeheartedly and want to nod my head to, but like the nuts and bolts of the conversation I'm not getting, and I know I'm not the only one. And I also know that is not anybody's fault who is speaking. Like there's some issue going on in terms of audio and the mic, it seems. So hopefully it's a temporary issue. I've certainly never experienced it before. And I'm trying to troubleshoot ways maybe to, if it is like an issue that like, persists, like what sorts of things we can do to make sure everybody can hear, short of having somebody just type what you're saying in the chat, which would be a lot on one person to do. But overall, I think what I'm hearing is you guys strategizing about ways to potentially not only hear directly from the community and communicate what the Our Jobs role is and what the work is that you've done up to this point, but to field what community wants to do next, and also to begin to actively strategize about how to put those things into action. I think that's all of those are all the right things. Unfortunately, that has to happen in addition to all of these recommendations that you already have, right? Which is just part of par for the course with this type of work, structured in this way. And so I think as you continue to do that, we'll look to, particularly with the equity committee, I think there's an opportunity, right? Given the openness that they've expressed, there's an opportunity to potentially really build a solid partnership that could create more direct channels to the level of access and the level of authority that you all will need to move these things into action. And I also think, and maybe this is something Stephanie was speaking to, I think I maybe heard something like this. There are also upcoming sort of items. I'm particularly thinking about the diversion subcommittee, but also the data subcommittee, right? But especially diversion is going to ask you guys, to make a motion or approve a motion for or a set of recommendations that would go directly to the DA's office, and wouldn't need to go through the board to be approved, because it would be the DA's purview to do this thing. And the DA, some time ago, I may have to remind her, but she was open to, and in favor of what is being proposed. So, also I think looking for those points, and I apologize if I'm saying something that's already been said, I just couldn't hear it. Looking for those points where there may not be that direct need for so much like discussion and approval, as opposed to something that's within the purview of a particular entity, and approaching that entity and asking for their direct cooperation and working to build those sorts of partnerships and pathways. So I think there are a number of ways to get at the type of action that we all want to see, and the type of progress that we all want to see in the county. And we will have to continue to build out and develop those multiple methods, only one of which has to be going directly to the board and trying to get, a majority vote in favor of something.
Did you call my name?
Yes.
Well, hell, I don't know what kind of ears Chris have, because I got some good mama bionic ears, but I ain't hear none of that. I'm over here and I hear Charlie Brown teacher's voice. That's what I hear. So I don't know what's going on in that room. but we can't hear. I'm with Christopher. I cannot. I heard Stephanie Medley. That's who I heard. So I don't know where she's sitting in the room, but somebody need to go over there and sit next to her and use the microphone because she's the only one who's coming through very clear. And everybody else sounds like hella muffled. I'm just being honest with you. So if we can't use closed caption or something, we need to pass the mic around or do something because I'm sitting here like got my volume all the way up and struggling to understand anything other than, like I said, Charlie Brown teacher's voice. And Christopher, that was some hella translating you just did. I don't know what you did, but that was good. And so I'm gonna say I agree with everything he just said, since that was the most I understood. But I think that we owe it to the not just us on Zoom, but for the people who may be listening to this recording later to do something better with the sound, because this recording is going to be of no use to anybody for what just happened in that room. And I'm just there's my most forthright way to say that. Nobody who's not present in that room is going to understand what you guys are saying. So we got to do something about the microphone. Except for I heard Stephanie and I heard a little bit of what Ellen said, but not very much. That's it. Thanks.
Can we do close?
That's what I'm looking for
Oh,
now.
okay.
But, and again, I think, as long as we're all able to elevate our voices, I think that would help too. It definitely came out clear. I'm curious as to what it might be, but we can certainly look into checking with our IT folks about this particular.
Any other public comment on item number 4?
Are we still supposed to be on this letter? Because we're still on the letter on the screen.
Yeah, that's right, Cheryl. I just left it there because it was the first page for item 4. And
Okay.
so there's no reason to actually be here.
Okay.
If there's no other public comment, we'll move to item number 5, which is to review and accept our job bylaws revision, which is attachment number 3. And it's page number 32 through 40.
Okay, and I'll open it up for this one and I'll get close and hopefully this will help assist in the audio issues. But, there was some time ago, our job members talked about expanding. Well, there was certainly several reviews of the bylaws to just kind of clean some things up, but then also, you know, was a request to expand the number of the community-based representative seats to include one additional seat of someone who sort of represents the mental health field. So what you have in your packet today are some of those clarifying points, expanding that membership structure, as well as trying to address quorum issues by having additional alternate member seats available as well. So in your packet, you have both a plain version and a red line version that was provided to us by county council. So this is something that you all are for the most part in favor of. It will go through then the proper channels to be board approved and then can go into effect. So I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have. Did that come out clear? Thank you.
And just for clarity, we're looking at the alternates, they're non-voting members, so it's just for the matter of fact.
Yes.
Okay.
And with the one additional seat for the community-based representative seat, it does not change our total number for a quorum needed to start a meeting, so. So like currently we need 10 members present in order to establish quorum for the meeting to continue. Having one additional meeting with the majority of your 18-member body with the one additional community-based representative seat, it will not change that quorum threshold.
So I'll open it up for discussion. No, I haven't had a chance to look through this, but if folks have suggestions, comments, I'll open it up at this time for folks to chime in.
Sorry, one more thing I do want to point out so that you guys are aware, you look on page 36 of the packet, page 5, I'm looking at the clean version, page 5 of the clean version. Under administration, we did, this wasn't necessarily discussed by our job members, but given the ongoing conversation with the various committees, of the standing committees of the Board of Supervisors about the administration of this body being within potentially the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, when it opens up, that language is kind of included here as well.
Jill, is there any? Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, so Patrice, the only thing, these are awesome changes. The only thing that I question, because it's not written in here explicitly, is whether or not those alternate members will be allowed to sit on subcommittees. In all other advisory bodies, the Board of Supervisors has opted for that, to allow those alternate members to be part of the subcommittees and to be voting members in those subcommittees.
So I can, yeah, I'm not quite certain either. So I can take that back to county council.
No, I mean, that's approved through county council on a variety of other advisory bodies, but it's not explicitly written in here. And so you would just have to add that.
If they're voting members on the subcommittee, will that impact the subcommittee forum?
Well, no, I mean, the subcommittee quorum, I mean, so the subcommittee could only be one less than a full quorum of this body, right? So is that, and so 10, what is it, 10 makes a quorum, is that right, Patrice?
Yes,
So your subcommittees could have only 9 members, right? And then if the alternates are allowed to be members of those subcommittees, because I don't think you have 9 members on your subcommittees at this point in time, they would be voting members on that subcommittee. So yes, so they would be full members of the subcommittee, and that is consistent through our other advisory bodies in the county to allow those alternate members to have voices and seats in those spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking because we have problems forming subcommittees.
Well, this gives you more of a pool of people who could volunteer their time and dedicate it, right? It wouldn't impact your subcommittees at all. You could still keep your subcommittees to whatever number you want, up to 9. But if you have members who are, you know, super busy and committed and can't commit to a subcommittee, it gives you more people to put on those subcommittees who maybe do want to do the work of those subcommittees.
Questions, comments, feedback? Hearing and seeing no additional comments or discussion, we can move to item 6 to discuss.
So you can, so it is an action item where you guys can accept, the revised. So you all are welcome to the action today, or there's anything else you would want to deliberate. But it is an action.
I make a motion, we accept these amendments to the bylaws.
Mind speaking on the bylaw?
I make a motion, we accept these additions to the bylaw.
I hate to put this up because I said we should have public input. With the modernization plan in place with the government level, I don't know what this is specific.
People online cannot hear this conversation.
I was asking if,
I'm so sorry.
mental health and not recognizing the need for a body, because I came in as an elder and I don't pray as much as I should. But I think we should have substance abuse included because the governor is making a big move toward having more behavioral health agenda over just mental health. And we know that individuals who are impacted by the judicial system we have in place now often have substance challenges. So, sorry, I was leaning into what was important to me and now more inclusive with that. So I just, yeah, I'm inclusive. I apologize.
So the way to do that, Gigi, I know you know this, but it's to change the word to behavioral health seat rather than mental health, because behavioral health includes both substance use and mental health.
And I thought about that before I said it, but the lane is different. And the governor finally recognized that. So I want to keep in mind what we're doing at the state level. There are some people who with mental health who are incarcerated for living with what is a medical condition, and there's some people who are incarcerated because they make poor decisions while living with substance abuse. So that would mean we would have only one, and the person would lean into the one that's most important to them. And I think we need to be leaning into both of those areas.
So are you then recommending 2 additional seats? I mean, one addition, in addition to the one.
Yeah, that's what I-
go on with.
One with yeah, but that's showing up around substance abuse and supporting that voice.
So could we change the seat to behavioral health and just say it to be one focusing on mental, one focusing on substance?
So if you add, so it now changes your form threshold. So if you could, if you didn't want to affect your form threshold, we could change the language from behavioral health, from mental health to behavioral health. And then through the recruitment process, you know, and however way, because there's a lot of qualifiers on this one anyway. You're either, it's a one representation. Okay, page 2 of the clean version, page 33 in the packet. It states one representative that is either an individual living with a self-disclosed mental health condition or a family member of an individual living with a mental health condition, or from a community-based organization serving individuals living with mental health challenges, or a community-based / private licensed mental health clinician. So there's already a lot of qualifiers that's going to open up your pool of potential applicants who will sit in that seat. And then during the interview process, you know, what have you, I guess, could advise the now equity committee, essentially what it is that our job members will be looking for in terms of the person that would then fill that role.
Are you asking for a person with experience or a professional person? I would think for the same criteria that you had for mental health, we have that same for substance use. To be fair, and people do decide how they show up to the mother as well as. It's hard to split that up when you're doing what's in the field or if you have that lived experience. What came first? Was it untreated mental health and I started self-medicating or what? Did I just start, you know, without having. I haven't found any county that have been able to integrate them well, and that's why we have programs that are specific to mental health and programs that are specific to the youth.
Well, yeah, so it depends. I mean, in my role, I'm not necessarily running SUD or AOD personally, but my office represents both. So you know, it depends on if we want somebody with SUD or AOD credentials, or you want somebody to represent that population based on live and work experience. So I do have both of those in my office as an AOD and substance use disorder and clinical mental health providers. But if we want a voice, if we want somebody with an actual certification to come in, you know, so that's key. If we do, then we need another seat. If we don't, then we have a session. Something else.
And because you mentioned, Judge Ball, one of the examples you gave was the Judge Ball person with substance abuse issues. I'm wondering if that could be a piece of the caveat of bullet 3, which talks about 3 representatives from CEOs that work with Judge Ball population. One to be reviewed for perhaps another to be with Judge Ball people with substance abuse disorder. Well, I mean, but it's 3, so it doesn't all have to rest.
I just had to bring it up because of the calls that I've been getting lately. It's not in our lane that, it's just not, the parents know you're, you know, more than likely that's like stuff. It's not, it's a challenge and that comes up a lot.
Discussion, so, I guess we just need to be in agreement of, are we gonna stick with the 1 seat and change it to behavioral health? Are we saying we want 2 seats, which will potentially pose a quorum problem, maybe?
And I would say, I'm always gonna be humanity over a number of forms, like what's needed for that policy around.
Well, if enough people don't show up, what we saying here, we're working on it. So I think that's important too, because part of the ongoing process.
I mean, we got to cancel our last, full body thing.
That's why I just think that's a realistic concern. So if there's a way to modify the highlighted additional seat in a way that obviously highlights the necessity of having someone with such involvement or experience, that might be the best course of action to have these conversations around.
Any other comments? Public comment, we'll open for public comment as well. Are there any public comments, folks online? So it sounds like, well, we can solidify it, but it sounds like we want to stick to just the 1 seat and maybe, maybe changing it to behavioral health. To include both mental and stuff. Are we in agreement with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I get the need for the full-fledged, isolated, and dedicated representation. But if one is an issue, then it's almost a moot point. You can't even, you know, our hands are tied in the way. We have to be able to make this form and we have to be, so if we have struggling already, it's probably find a way to help ourselves with that flexibility by saying, okay, this seat can kind of cover this area. They do go sometimes hand in hand. You also do have dual diagnostic, which is substance use and mental health combined and getting treatment at the same time. So there is a way too that emerges at times, right? So they're not usually exclusive all the time. So we have a need to, you know, represent and voice with one title, and maybe we want to explore that because we all know.
I would assume if we walked into any, jail, prison, for people who know that they're there from, because they have a substance abuse problem, they would want someone here. That's it. That's just, they would want, they wouldn't care about other people who are committed to being in this process, whether they're gonna show up or not. They would be like, yeah, I'm not going to take. Just like the mental health. When I came in, snuck in my role as a safety here, I was doing it because there wasn't a mental health specific person. And I feel guilty whenever I cut about saying that. My problems there. I would apply to the mental health plan. If I had options. Okay, and I am.
So can I just say one thing to that, because that's the thing, there's so many, because I'm the one that reviews the application. So many folks around the table actually can qualify for a number of different seats. It's just a matter of, it does create the pathway for folks to then apply and understand what it is that our job body is looking for in terms of representation. And then at the place of the interviews is where you then have an opportunity to discern of all of the applicants who then potentially fit any of these qualifications, and there's a lot of overlap, who are the best members to really, or best candidates, if you will, to really carry the work forward. So I think it's, more than anything, I think having that seats available shows the intention from this body that you do want that voice at the table. But please believe, practically when it happens, you're going to have a ton of applicants that are going to qualify for a number of different avenues, and yet still bring what it needed to the table.
I was gonna say that, and I think, you know, there's always opportunities to bring guests in to talk with us and discuss things. And so, when different discussions come up, I think that part of our job is to suggest, like, hey, I do think that we need to bring such and such in for this conversation so we can get a little bit more information and a little bit more insight. And so, because there's probably a ton of different people that we could have at the table. And so I think we need to be strategic in how we're thinking about the conversations that we're having, and also who we engage in those conversations.
Jill?
Yeah, and just to add to that, remember you're adding alternates. So any number of those alternates could also, you know, you could select somebody from either mental health or SUD background to kind of cover that base and have that voice at the table as well.
I think just by definition, behavioral health means mental health itself, use disorders. So it's much more inclusive language to add for this additional.
Yeah, because substance use is a behavioral modification program. It has a, you know, it has a small amount to do with actual drugs and a lot to do with your behavior, right? So, most people ain't gonna tell you that. That's what we do at we found it on substance use. So, you know, it's the behavioral side is probably 75%. That's why I bought it.
Yeah, and again, in terms of process, if approved by all of you and then also approved by the board that this is the direction you want to go in, when we do the recruitment for the vacant seats, we will recruit for your existing vacant new seats, as well as the 4 alternate seats. So we'll get applications that will kind of cross over all of those. And then, and I believe at least the last round, in which we got the community rep seats filled, PPC members kind of took their, after they interviewed everyone, because there were more applicants than there were seats, they then identified where they would like to see that particular applicant represent that relative seat. So those are just some things to keep in mind in terms of being strategic of the representation on the site.
Well, you have other individuals here who's in the department, that this was, so maybe we should just have the environmental director be a part of it, and then that's all. Yeah, and then that would already be done. Like you here, Devin, you're responsible to take care of our children. Yeah.
Sounds like we have two things on the table. One is to change that, one representative, to behavioral health, and as Gigi just also suggested, having the department, be under public entity as an appointed person.
So one option too there, if you didn't want to create an additional public entity seats, we technically have health services represented by way of our chief equity officer there. But health services currently doesn't have any proxies. So that is an opportunity as well. Or then just create a separate public entity seat that would be behavioral health.
No, my understanding is that Gilbert is here because he's the equity officer, not necessarily a subject matter expert around behavioral health, but around UTI. So it's a little different because.
So he's the health services
Yeah.
representative so it's to represent all of health services, essentially.
And we've had behavioral health, I think before like that, before they switch out. Or
Because I've been here, I haven't seen it, but that's,
I feel like we have. But
I think it's the other committee.
Oh, never mind. Was that you know, listen? Okay. Never mind.
That's me, happy.
And I'm not trying to confuse everything, but I'm really big on understanding the calls that I receive in my office and the voice that comes. Where can I go, to make a difference around this? And the text message I just got to say, hey, what did they do? Real.
So, I mean, I would like to have this voted on today, but if we need to pause, think about it and regroup, definitely go to that, but I'll go.
Either way, it's. Yeah. Yeah, we should be able to probably tell this, today. I mean, having the representation, I agree, but it, we wanna also do what makes the most sense and give us the most opportunity to serve in 100% capacity too. So that's all it is, it's just, 60 one here, half a dozen the other. But I can believe what.
So we have a motion on the table, they need you to amend the motion to include that it states behavioral health.
I'd like
like to amend the motion to change the language to say behavioral health instead of mental health. That doesn't quite go. That's.
What? I think I missed.
She's not comfortable, I don't think, right?
Right, it just didn't really, it doesn't really kind of get to the, because what that would do is you're gonna either have one or the other most likely, and I think the issue is, oh,
You might have someone that says, I have co-occurring disorder, or I'm a clinician that works with both, or I've had experience in both, or, so. We don't know what the realm of possibility is, because what type of applicants we get.
I think that's I think we need a little optimism. And I think that with the way it's written now, mental health is just mental health. And behavioral health is both mental health and substance abuse. So I think that is a change that clearly anybody who's reading that and hoping to fill that seat will understand, that it's behavioral health. It's all encompassing. It's not just limited to somebody who has a diagnosis or, is exhibiting a certain mental illness. It's much broader than that and inclusive of the behavioral condition.
the statistics improved in our juvenile justice system for young people, where the last time I checked, 60% of them live with a mental health diagnosis. Have we improved that? Because then I can say, okay, well, this argument goes true. But as long as we have young people who are incarcerated and their mental illness was untreated, then I think we need to have a mental health seat.
I can't respond directly to Gigi on that very important question, but to back out just a little bit. And to go back to the letter that we were sending to the Board of Supervisors and some disappointment, maybe frustration in a lack of deliverables for execution. And I want to remind everybody of the frustration of when we come into this room 3 months ago and we don't have a quorum. I want us to be pragmatic, and so I'm going to keep you on this. Like, let's have some flexibility. Patrice had said that there's different ways for this all kind of juggled and get together. I think we are better tomorrow if we have a change than saying we didn't vote on it, we're going to come back again, and we'll be indecisive. And then the very thing that we're being critical of not having an execution, we are going to live that experience ourselves. We are better making a change because we're addressing a key component. I get it in an ideal world, Gigi, I agree with you. Let's have mental health and substance abuse represented separately. However, I think we're better off with flexibility and voting on this. So I hear you on all aspects of it, and I echo the need for it. But I think we have to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to leave here saying we didn't accomplish something at all.
So
Hopefully I could be heard. I was a long way away from the microphone, Jill and Chris.
You were loud and clear, Simon.
It's this side of the room. That's what it is. That side of the room.
Come on over, guys.
So I agree, and so I continue to amend my motion. I amend my motion that we change the language to say behavior. So there's a motion on the table.
We have a second.
I'll put my money where my mouth is. I'll second.
Denise, can we get a roll call? Wait, I've already did public comment, so we good. Okay. Denise,
Well, before you get a roll call, can Simon just say the motion because he had a voice?
The motion is to amend the representative to be one from behavioral health fitting into the 4 criteria.
Got it. Okay, roll call. Here we go. Kiki,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Simon,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Shayla,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Renell,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Since I don't know what the hell is going on, yes.
Okay. Beto,
Yes.
LaShante,
Yes.
and Gigi.
No.
Okay, motion passes.
Denise. All right. I know some folks have to leave, shortly, so we'll move to item number 6, which is to discuss, review report from our job subcommittee. We have the first. Oh, yes. Yes. Well, they can hear you, so I don't know if I need to be back, but, go ahead, Stephanie.
So I am the chair of the diversion committee, and we had a meeting.
You're, I would see data subcommittee, which is 43.
I have it up here.
Oh, there we go.
I think I can see it.
So our meeting, Shayla, was on August 24th.
It's
Ears or eyes?
Thank you.
page 75.
So we had our meeting August 24th. And you said 75, right?
Mhm.
And at that meeting, we talked about our statement on the eligibility criteria, and Chris talked a little bit about this. Last year, we worked a lot on the adult diversion criteria, or rather, we worked on a group of offenses that would be excluded from, because that list was shorter. A list of offenses that are excluded from diversion. So we have a good number of offenses that would be eligible for diversion for adults. And one of the things that came up in a previous meeting, I believe it was Cheryl that brought this up, and it was a very good point around how are we comparing the data that we've had, that we've gotten from like the data subcommittee, data that's missing. But how are we using that to inform what that eligibility criteria looks like? And so we already know that there's some issues around like the data, and we need to do some more kind of deep dives into the data and what it looks like against the offenses. But we also want to be able to make sure that the DA can start applying the possibility of diversion for different folks with this criteria in mind. And so wanted to create a statement, draft a statement that reflects that that data is still important. And once we are in a place and have that capacity to really analyze the data, and just suppose that with that criteria, that we then reevaluate what that criteria looks like and make the necessary changes. And so that, I believe, is on the next, is on the next page, 76 as well as 77. And it states the diversion definition that we worked on, I want to say a couple of years ago now. Some of the objectives and standards that we had, and the statement that we would like to send to the DA's office. And so that's something that we would actually like the full body to discuss and give feedback on. And so I guess I'll have a little discussion now. And I can talk about the other thing. Yeah, after that discussion.
Sounds good. Any comments? You wanna go ahead and open it up for discussion, and some folks do have to leave at 3. Yeah, any questions, comments?
I do want to say one thing. Shayla, I don't know what you were over there whispering, but I do want to say one thing.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna torture you because y'all torturing us over here on, on Zoom. So I just want to add that since the time of our last meeting, for those of you who don't know, Illinois became the first state to abolish cash bail as a condition of pretrial release with their new law called Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity today that just took effect on Monday. That is all, and I'm complete, and I know that you can hear me, and I don't have a loud voice. That's it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I do want to talk about that at our next diversion meeting. That's it.
Stephanie, I just have a question, because it says there's requests for changes, did you receive something from the VA for their criteria on youth and adults that you were using as a point of reference?
Yeah, Simon was on the committee that worked on it. So Simon, Ellen, Michael was on that committee. I believe the changes that we're talking about was actually to the language. In not the definition, but just around our statement to the DA's office. And we wanted to make sure that we included some of the language from previous work that we did around that definition and objectives and standards.
One of the things, to speak to that, one of the problems, and when I first came on, working with our job, I got onto the diversity committee. I think in the very first meeting, it's like, it makes no sense. We were trying so hard to come up with all the crimes that could be eligible. And then we forget about one. We're like, oh, this is a big pot. We should definitely be considering this one. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be easier just to say these are the very few crimes that are ineligible, and everything else that we haven't thought of, then it would apply to. So it was that just sort of reverse thinking, but application and execution of it still carried out the same.
You guys have an opportunity to also review the report and the profile and the numbers that we know consistently low for quite a while now. So that normally we have criminal justice committee, and so we have staff coming in from public defender's office, but the profile that are not reflective and the decision about the that usually about that. So it's been around 10. You know, I like it because that are not, referred forward, and then you're in jail. And not given opportunity. So,
Yeah.
there's a full range of diversion.
Yeah, so one of the things I think would be good is probably for another meeting, at another diversion meeting, is for us to even learn a little bit more about mental health court, and learn like what some of the data that's coming out of that. And then I think also with this criteria, making sure that that's being used too with mental health court. I don't know that much about mental health court, so I can't speak, much to it. But I do think that that's something that as a committee, we can also look at and ensure that that will fall into all of the criteria that we're talking about as well. And then another thing that I did want to say is that this was specifically for adults. We're not leaving young people out, but we have to regroup and come together another subcommittee and talk about the criteria for young people. And so that, but we did actually want to bring this first, because this would apply as well. To the young folks.
Chris, I see your hands up.
Thank you. So as far as the subcommittee of the subcommittee, I'll just say real quick, I call them work groups. It's easier to, to distinguish that way. I just wanted to let folks know, I know it's a little confusing to have this language and not to have the criteria listed. But it's been over a year since the last time we discussed the criteria. So while we have that, I want the work groups to look at it again, to make sure that's still where we are, since it's been so long. And that's why they aren't here to show you. But this language is here essentially to say, even though we may not have the data that shows the impact, let's move, if everybody agrees on the criteria that we have, let's move that forward in the DA's office, which is something DA Becton's already agreed to, and then let's come back if necessary to make revisions. And so just wanting folks to sort of respond to that, or to edit or revise this statement as much as is necessary to feel comfortable with that. And then we will come back to this group, hopefully at our next full body meeting, which will be the last one of the year, and have that information for you guys so that you can actually look at the offenses that we're talking about that we would potentially leave out for now, and make sure that there is agreement there before moving them forward. And hopefully we can do that for both populations, because if we can, that is like a major item on the list of recommendations that we have, that you guys are able to actually move forward. And again, it's something that you don't have to wait to get approval in the same way to do, because it involves and is essentially the purview of the DA's office.
Yeah, I think to back up Gigi's suggestion, I know we've done presentations at the subcommittee or work group regarding different types of diversion that currently exist in the county. And I do think it would be a good space to have further study, not just for behavioral health court and what are the admissibility criteria, is there data being collected about folks that are rejected for behavioral health court services, is that data being collected and examined based on race, gender, age, other demographics. But we also have new as of 3-4 years ago, mental health diversion, which goes before a judge, and folks can make a petition to be diverted under mental health diversion. And I think it would be a good time in the county for us to take a look at that, to do a program 3 or 4 years old. And so we would have the ability to kind of look back at some of our staffing for the multiple campuses are funded, so there is a good amount of collection. It's, I think, for those programs which kind of have some overlap in ways it would be good for this program to do.
Just the Ellen, as well as regional center diversion, already that's where I was doing as well. Since I want to say 2021.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people use those diversions interchangeably, so they're actually for two different populations, which obviously sometimes overlaps, but I think if you're going to look at all the options, also consider that and select for cognitive disability diversion.
And real quick, we got a presentation also from Casey Rain regarding the restorative justice initiative that the ORJ is launching. There is an event that's happening next Tuesday. I think it's already filled up. And it's a ride. Hopefully some of you all will be there. But there's going to be other opportunities for people to participate in, because I think it's going to be a pretty long process over the next couple of years or so, to really kind of take a deep dive into the restorative practices that are happening throughout the county, or not from the county. And so I think it's gonna be a good way to figure out where some gaps in different regions of the county that we can get some services from. And then the diversion committee talked about our meeting schedule. And this was really to make sure we're creating spaciousness and being able to actually do some of the work that happens in the work groups and at the subcommittee. So we're going to move to a bi-monthly schedule, so that we can make sure we're scheduling things and actually get work done. Because those months, they come up very quickly. And so we'll be meeting bi-monthly now. And our next meeting is October 18th or 9th. And I'm sorry, I have to go before. So I will see you in a couple of months. Or a month.
I know we push the order around, but if you do wanna, if you put out for
Proceed.
yeah.
Yeah, I can just really quickly, the community engagement and funding subcommittee, took the opportunity to look at, the sheriff's, oversight quarterly report. You may recall back in the June, our job meeting, there were certain items following the conversation around the public statements. Where there were certain items that would be assigned to different committees to look into a little further. And so, community engagement and funding subcommittee did look at both the, sheriff's, oversight quarterly report as well as, starting conversations around the sessions or events that may be taking place and in what ways can our job help support, expanding that. So you see noted here that there was some public comments that were received in regards to the report. We did provide an update on, obviously, our jobs annual update. Some of the items that were discussed in terms of additional data points that Steve would like to see added into the sheriff's report is in regards to comparison numbers between overall population by race and ethnicity, compared to the racial demographics of the jail population. It's possibly the top 5 underlying offenses leading to killings. Age groups, age breakdown of your looking at individuals that are looking to county jails, traffic stops by race and ethnicity, civilian complaints, and numbers of cases and charges dismissed. There was some conversation about the previous work done by the data subcommittee, and ultimately data subcommittee, which we were talking about, ended up taking up some of Steve's recommendations in terms of additional data points and to clarify. Let's see. We talked about the challenges around data collection and management for supporting our jobs work and furthering recommendations. So we kind of gave a background or history around that and all the numerous committee meetings where this has been lifted up at this point. And then we started getting into the conversation around identifying funding opportunities, again, to support either ongoing healing processes or centers or spaces throughout the county and how that can be done. And then also looking at meeting dates for the rest of the year. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Comments?
I have a question. It appears you guys just lost quorum in the room.
We did.
So I recognize that Stephanie has left. Who else is no longer present?
We're down to 9.
everybody had to be in the room, Denise, to keep the quorum. So, I mean, at this point in time, Patrice, I'd say since you're already gathered, everything can just be informational reports. There won't be any discussions or decisions.
Noted.
Sorry, what happened?
See, I'm counting 10 people still.
Patrice, I don't think Patrice is on our JOB, is she?
No,
That's why we need alternate.
but I mean, I can go through who I have. I have Kiki, Ellen, Simon, Shannon in replace of Lynn, is that correct? I have Shayla, Stephanie has departed. I have Renelle, I have Matt Malone, I have Beto, and Gigi, and I think I see what I've done. Okay, we're down to 9. I counted Lashante as being in person, so that's the issue. Okay, thank you.
So we'll end the meeting for now. We can take the remaining items and add them to your next agenda for your next meeting, which will be in December. I believe it's December 12th. Will be the next quarterly meeting. You can also talk offline about if any of the remaining items should be applied to any future subcommittee meetings or further discussion.
Gigi had a question.
Now, how do you get things added to the agenda?
For which bodies?
For this body,
The-
like if
the
you
general
want something.
For the full body? Yeah, so you can always connect with Chris. And then typically try to coordinate with the chairs about the things that we heard in terms of next steps. At the conclusion of the previous meeting, and then deliberate about, with those upcoming agenda items. So if there's some other items you'd like to add to the bucket, typically at this meeting, by the time we got to next steps, we talked, we would create space to offer that. But you can always, myself or Chris.
So with that being said, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. It looks like we're moving the report back from data subcommittee, the debrief of the Truth Act forum, and then review our jobs, role, and authority to implement, execute work plans to our next meeting, which is scheduled for December 12th. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.